Hi everybody, my name is Flora Waycott and I'm an artist and illustrator and author of this book, Draw Every Little Thing. This is a step-by-step drawing and painting tutorial book, and it focuses on the world around you, whether that's around your home, around your neighborhood, out in the garden, or even in your wardrobe. You will find something interesting and inspiring to draw or paint without having to venture too far. So today, for June Makers Month at Kinokuniya, I am going to paint one of my step-by-step tutorials, so please enjoy. Inside the book, you'll find at the beginning some tools and materials that you'll need to get started on your creative journey, and there are also some drawing and painting techniques as well. And then these are the tutorials that you'll find inside. So we've got pets, how to draw a tea tin that you might find in your cupboard in your kitchen, and some house plants, and there are many more. And at the back of the book you will find some crafting projects that you can do. So today I'm going to be painting this tutorial, which is houseplants and pets, and you'll find this on page 46 and 47. So as you can see in step 1, the first thing we're going to do is make a pencil sketch of our scene, and then we'll start to fill in all of the elements until we have a finished scene like this one. This is the pencil sketch which I have come up with, and as you can see it's slightly different to the sketch from my book, which is the one just above it. I have added another cat instead of a dog, and I've added some more houseplants and made the window larger. So please feel free to personalise your scene however you want to. Also in my book you will find on page 44 and 45 lots of different houseplant shapes which you can play with and include in your scene. The last thing we need to do before we paint is to transfer our sketch onto some sturdy watercolour paper. So I have done this using a light box, or if you don't have a light box you can tape your sketch to a window and then take your watercolour paper on top, and then you just trace the sketch onto the watercolour paper. As you can see, I've done it very faint, so make sure you don't press too hard with your pencil so that your pencil lines don't show up when we paint. So before we get started, just a few things that we'll need. So I've got a selection of small round brushes here. This is size 2. I've also got some paints. I use gouache paints. So they're water soluble like watercolours, but they're less transparent and you get a really nice matte finish. So I've got gouache here, and I also use something called acrylic gouache, which is a mix between gouache and acrylic paints, and so these will dry matte as well, but they're nice and opaque and a bit thicker. I also have a couple of paint palettes as well, and I don't tend to wash my palettes, so as you can see there's quite a lot of paint on them already. And I've got a bucket of water and some paper towels to wipe my brushes with. So we're going to start by painting the plants first, and then we'll do the pots, and then we'll work our way into the scene. So it's easier to paint the stems of the plants first, and I usually paint all of them before I do the leaves, and then this just gives a nice frame for what your plant is going to look like. So I'm going to paint all the solid colour first, and then add leaf details later on when the paint is dry. So this leaf here, you can see that it overlaps with the windowsill, but don't worry because we're just going to paint around it when it comes to doing the windowsill. So as you can see, My gouache paint is fairly thick, so it's not as watery as watercolour would be, but it gives a nice solid colour, and that's what I really like when I work with gouache. And it's nice and vibrant. I also really like it when there's a little bit of the paintbrush marks are showing through. It just gives it that really nice handmade feel. So now I'm going to switch colours. I'm going to do a different colour for the other plants. All the leaf details make everything come alive, and I talk about that in my book, adding details that maybe you might overlook, like a little dot here and there or little lines, but they really just bring the painting together. Now for this plant here, I'm going to paint the pot first, because as you can see, the thin plant stem comes over the pot, and so if we paint the pot first, then we can just paint the plant on top of it. So it just makes it a lot easier and less fiddly. So wait for that plant pot to dry completely before painting the stems of the leaves over the top. So now I've painted all of my plants and my pots. I'm now going to paint the cat. So I've decided to make this guy here a grey stripy cat, and this is going to be a black cat on the windowsill. So once this cat is dry, we can add the stripes and the facial features. So we'll just paint the black cat while we allow this one to dry. I'm trying to be really careful not to smudge my grey cat as I do this. It's quite hard because I'm right-handed. Okay, so I think our grey cat is nearly dry. So that's the great thing about gouache as well. It dries very quickly, so you can work quite fast with it. So now we're going to add some stripe detail to the grey cat, and we'll give it its face as well. So I'm just going to mix a grey that's a little bit darker than the body of the cat. So just add a bit of black into the grey that you used already. And just going to add these little lines that start off long and then they become short. And then we're also going to draw in where her thigh is. Now we're going to add her eyes. So you may be able to see your sketch underneath from your grey that you painted earlier, but if not, please refer to my book to see placement, or refer back to your sketch to see where your eyes should be. With cats, I tend to slant their eyes upwards as well, and it doesn't end up making them look unfriendly at all. Once you give them a little smile like this, it's suddenly a happy cat. So now that my cats are both complete, we are going to work on the sky outside the window. And also with the black cat, I just used some white gouache and a very fine brush to add the eyes and the mouth and the other details. So in my book, it shows a dark sky behind the scene, but I've decided to do a daytime scene. So I'm going to use a lighter blue and work into the sky behind the cat and the plants here. So follow the line of the window frame and just fill in where the sky should be. So carefully go around your motifs, and go around this leaf here, and it is easier if you have a finer brush, so you can really get up close. Don't worry if it's not perfect. Sometimes the paint overlaps onto something you've just painted, but that's okay. Remember, because it's hand painted, it all adds to the charm. So here we've got some stems and leaves coming from this pink pot. So what I'm actually going to do is paint over them, because they're just very, very fine, and it's going to be quite difficult to paint around them with the blue. So I am going to just paint over them, and then I will fill them in when the blue is dry. Okay, so we've done the sky. So the next thing we'll do is we will fill in the window frame. So the painting is nearly finished. We have painted in the window frame, and all we need to do now is add in the details to the leaves and the pots. Can't forget to add whiskers onto the black cat. So I didn't add them in earlier because I knew that the background was going to be a bit lighter, so I wanted to paint the background blue first and then add the whiskers in for the cat. Just 3 little lines on either side of his face. A little brown line on this plant pot here. Bring it to life a little bit more. Now lastly, I am going to add a little bit of a shadow at the bottom here, because at the moment this grey cat looks like she's floating a little bit, and so do the plants. So we're just going to mix up a really light sandy colour, and for this I will use a slightly bigger flat brush as well. And then all you need to do is just do a wash along the bottom. It doesn't have to be perfect. Don't worry if there are some dry patches of paint and some wet patches. I actually quite like that look. Now what I also want to do is just add a little suggestion of wallpaper so that the background's not completely blank and stark. So I'm just going to add a tiny little pattern detail to the wall. Nothing fancy, but just completes the picture. They don't have to be precise. I'm just dotting them around where I see a big piece of white. Now our wallpaper is complete and it's nice and homey. And that is the end of our painting. Thank you so much for watching my painting tutorial today. This is the finished painting from my book Draw Every Little Thing, which you can find at Kinokuniya in Sydney, and please pop in during the month of June as it's June Makers Month, so you'll find lots and lots of creative books there. Thank you for watching.